we've been sort of raised and brainwashed by society to kind of have blind faith and trust in leadership. Whether it's a religious figure, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a lawyer, whether it's your employer, and it sets us up to be, set up for failure, to be taken advantage of. There's good and bad in every walk of life, and to blindly trust that people are going to do the right thing it's setting yourself up for failure. So you have to question things. Not just be blindly loyal or blindly trusting, and make sure that you understand. Don't be afraid. Don't be intimidated. Don't be scared to stand up and question things. That's how people get taken advantage of. What you should do is document everything. You should understand what your rights are. You should understand the employee handbook and what the internal rules and procedures are within the company. And then you need to decide, whether or not how important this job is to you. How toxic of a work environment it is, whether this is something that you need to get out of right away because it's harming your health, or this is something that you need to plan and navigate around. You need to decide if this is a company you want to try to stay at and move to a different area within the company, or this is something you want to bring to a head and try to resolve it through a separation or a severance agreement. I tell folks to, not stay stuck if they're unhappy, and to figure out a plan and a path to move forward. And the first step is always to identify what your desired outcome is, and then based on your personal and financial situation, how to achieve that without hurting yourself. I'm not a big fan of filing complaints with human resources. Oftentimes they'll turn around and bite you in the butt. Human resources wants to have a smooth sailing ship, and they don't want to have any choppy waters. And if you're in there making complaints, you're causing choppy waters. Now, whether that's your fault or someone else's fault, oftentimes the person who makes that complaint oftentimes isn't there 3 months later. So human resources is there to protect the organization at all costs. They are not your friend. They are not your advocate. They do not keep anything you tell them confidentially. So when I say go there, I say do it with intent to create a path, document the situation, so that you can go back and say, hey, I'm not just making this up out of the blue after the fact. When you're terminated in a retaliatory way, you're documenting what's going on, why it's happening. I tell folks that every time after they have an interaction with one of their toxic managers is to write an email talking about when this conversation took place, what date it took place on, who was involved in the conversation, what the topic was about, and then send it back to that manager and say, to memorialize our conversation, to make sure we're both on the same path, this is what we discussed. I brought these concerns to you. This is what your response was. And this is what my response was, and so on and so forth. That way you can't get the finger pointing and the gaslighting and the lies. Your manager will know that you're serious, that you're not someone to be taken advantage of and rolled all over, and that they better tread lightly if they're looking to do that with you. Employers make rules for everyone to follow, but they often don't follow them themselves. So you get the employee handbook on your first day of work. You probably don't even read it, and you never look at it again and forget that it even exists. And meanwhile, you go through your life at work and things happen, and they may seem wrong or not. And the leadership is making decisions that may go against you, but they may also go against the employee handbook, and you're not even aware of it. And leadership isn't held accountable to it. So I always say, like, if a tree falls in a forest and nobody heard it, did it make a noise? If an employer does wrongful, harmful, illegal things that go against the employee handbook and their own policies, but nobody stands up to call it out, did they do anything wrong? And can you do anything about it then at that point? No. So I always say, be aware, stay on top of things, know your rights. Don't be afraid to stand up to things that you think are wrong. And what my practice is all about is avoiding having to go to attorneys. Lawyers focus on a very narrow sliver of the law and nothing else. I kind of focus on the entire person, the entire situation. So I look at empathy. I look at the court of public opinion. I look at legality. From a legal perspective, the goal here is to avoid it and show the employer why it's in their best interest to step up and do the right thing, and what it might look like if they don't want, if they're unwilling to do so. And then if all else fails and they're unwilling to, interact with you, cooperate with you, work with you, then you have that opportunity to go the legal route if that's what you desire. Well, employment agreements are a big point for me, because what I've seen over and over again, and it's a trick that employers play. When you're starting a new job, they'll give you an offer letter that may be 2 or 3 pages long. It'll have some basic information about it, your salary, how often you're paid, some health care, so on and so forth. And then you think that this is all you need to do. So you sign the employment letter and you resign from your old employer and you start the new job. And then a week into it, you're now presented with an employment agreement. And that is now 8 to 10 to 12 pages long. And it has all types of restrictive clauses and non-competes and non-solicits and inventions clauses. It has other information as well, maybe about with your comp plan, your stock equity grant, and things may be different than what was verbally told to you in the interview. And the specifics were not covered in the employment letter. Now you've resigned from your job, you have no place to go back to, and you're left with no ability to negotiate any of these terms, and you got to sign them. So I always tell folks, make sure you're getting everything they're going to want you to sign up front before you resign and accept the job. And I give folks lists of things that they should be asking for. Get your employment, get a copy of the employment offer, get your comp plan, get the stock plan, look at the employee handbook. I tell people when they're interviewing for a job, once they get the letter in writing, the offer in writing, flip the switch. Now go ahead and ask all those tough questions that you might have been afraid to ask because you were concerned that you wouldn't get the job offer. Now you have it in writing, you have it in hand. Run hypothetical scenarios by leadership based on your own personal experiences from the past that may have been unsettling, and ask them how they would respond in a hypothetical manner to this situation. And that way you can kind of gauge their morals, their values, their ethics, and how they kind of view and treat employees.